Hi, I'm Linus, and I'm going to talk about BITVM today. And BITVM is a way to build better Bitcoin bridges. Yeah, why at all do we care about BITVM? Well, we want to bridge Bitcoin to other systems because, first of all, the layer 1 doesn't scale very well. I guess Vitalik just recently changed his mind on how well the Ethereum L1 changes, if I'm correctly informed. I'm not quite sure if that's true. But I think he thinks we can scale L1. Unfortunately, in Bitcoin world, we still think we cannot scale L1, so we would like to bridge Bitcoin to other systems, like sidechains, rollups, or privacy protocols like ZK coins. And that would enable rapid innovation, cheap experimentation, scalability, privacy, and all the stuff that is hard to introduce into the main layer because Bitcoin is already so ossified. Unfortunately, we don't have a Vitalik who can wake up in the morning and be in hard fork mood. We have to find decentralized consensus, which is hard, and it's getting harder every day, and it's pretty much impossible at this point. So we have to work with what we have. And previously, the state of the art for Bitcoin bridges was multi-sig bridges, so classical trust me bro model, which is of course not so cool because you're essentially giving your money to some people and you hope that they don't run away. A bit better model is over-collateralized bridges, but those bridges are very capital inefficient, so they didn't find much use in practice. So the question arises, how can we build better Bitcoin bridges? And in particular, how can we build better Bitcoin bridges without a consensus upgrade? Because that's pretty much not on the menu. And the solution to that, or the rough problem actually is, on the one hand, we have Bitcoin. Do you see my? Yeah, okay, you see my cursor. So on the one hand, we have Bitcoin, and on the other hand, there is some side system, and we want to bridge the BTC asset to the side system. And this part is actually the easy part. The hard part is getting it back again, because when you want to get it back, you have to prove to Bitcoin that you were actually entitled to take money out of the side system. And to do that, you have to prove the state of the side system to Bitcoin. The trivial solution, which doesn't work, would be that you feed all the blocks of the side system into Bitcoin. But of course, that's impractical because you would have to feed all the blocks of the side system into Bitcoin, which doesn't give you any scalability. So this is the hard part, and the solution for that, which probably guys in the Ethereum world are very familiar with, is snarks. Snarks are these is an amazing cryptographic compression technique that allows you to essentially compress infinite amount of data or infinitely many blocks into a very succinct proof that you can easily provide to a chain and then convince that chain that you are allowed to take money out of a bridge. So snarks are the thing that we would like to have on Bitcoin. However, it's not easy to verify them on Bitcoin because the scripting language in Bitcoin is very, very limited. And that's why we came up with BITVM, and BITVM is the solution. And now we are in the third iteration, which we call BITVM3, and this is based on Garbled circuits. And this makes it quite efficient. I give you a rough overview of how BITVM works. As I said before, we want to build snark-verified BTC bridges, so we actually want to have a snark verifier, and BITVM is a snark verifier more or less. And no consensus changes are required for that. And how it does it is it uses optimistic computation. Instead of actually verifying the snark, a snark is provided, and if that snark is incorrect, then you can disprove it. And disproving something is often much easier than to prove something. A very simple example for that is if I give you two odd numbers, or let's say I give you two even numbers and ask you to multiply them, and you give me as a result an odd number, then just look at the fact that it's an odd number and can tell that it's wrong. I don't have to look at the entire number. I don't have to redo the calculation to show that it's incorrect. Just showing that it's an odd number shows that it cannot be the product of an even number, of two even numbers. And that's kind of what makes this efficient. It's easier to disprove a faulty thing than to actually verify that something is fully correct. And so we play this game between operators and challengers. Operators are the entities who run the bridge, and challengers is essentially anyone who has like any stake in the site system and who wants the system to be secure. And it works such that the operator, they can initiate a withdrawal, and during withdrawal they assert to a proof. They essentially commit and say, this is my proof. And if it's invalid, then challengers can slash them. And if it's valid, then just a timeout runs out and the operator can take money out of the bridge. This is the basic mechanism. So the operator provides a proof, people check it. If it's invalid, they slash them. Otherwise, nothing really happens. The operator can just take the money. And the difference between BITVM2 and BITVM3 is mainly that BITVM2 used on-chain computation in Bitcoin script. And that was extremely inefficient, very expensive. It cost lots of fees, and it used like all kinds of non-standard transactions, which means you cannot just broadcast them to the mempool. You had to go to miners directly and ask them to include your transactions in a block. And BITVM3 is vastly better in many regards, in particular because it uses off-chain computation in garbled circuits, which is way, way cheaper in terms of fees. And it doesn't require any non-standard transactions. It's regular Bitcoin transactions that you can just submit to normal mempools. And yeah, to give you a comparison how inefficient BITVM2 was, the assert transaction where the operator asserted to a proof was 2 megabytes. And the disprove transaction where a challenger could disprove the proof was 4 megabytes. So in total, in the unhappy path, you had to be able to put like 6 megabytes of script on chain. And that is, of course, extremely inefficient. It's 1.5 blocks full of Bitcoin script just for a single withdrawal in the unhappy path. In the happy path, it's okay, but the unhappy path was pretty inefficient. And now with BITVM3 and garbled circuits, we could improve that a lot, because now the assert transaction is only 8 kilobytes, and the disprove transaction is even smaller, it's only 200 bytes. So all in all, we get roughly 1,000x improvement from BITVM2 to BITVM3. And this actually makes it pretty practical. And the key idea behind behind garbled circuits is conditional disclosure of secrets. So I disclose a secret under a certain condition. And this condition is going to be the snark is incorrect. So I disclose a secret if the snark is incorrect, and then that secret is the fraud proof. It works such that during setup, we agree on some sort of black box. This is going to be the garbled circuit. And then afterwards, during withdrawal, the operator, they will provide a proof, and then you can feed that proof into the black box. And if it's incorrect, then you learn a secret. So exactly if the proof is incorrect, you learn that secret. And that makes the secret a fraud proof, because you learn the secret only if the snark was invalid. If the snark was valid, then the black box doesn't give you anything. The timeout runs out and the operator can take the money. But if it's invalid, then you learn that secret, and that secret will act as a fraud proof. And that's what the challengers will put on chain in the end. And how do garbled circuits work? Well, to understand how garbled circuits work, we first have to understand how a garbled gate works. How many of you are familiar with like logic gates roughly, AND, OR, XOR? You've heard about that? Okay, cool. So this is an AND gate. It takes A and B. A is a bit, B is a bit, so both of them are 0 or 1. And the output C is also a bit. So I take 2 bits, and if both of them are 1, then I'm going to output 1. Otherwise, I'm going to output 0. This is a basic AND gate. And now how do we garble such an AND gate? Well, we replace these values with secrets. So you see everywhere where there was a 0, there's, or like in the A column, everywhere where there was a 0, now we have A0 there. And where there was a 1, now we have A1 there. And same for B and same for C. And these secrets, they are unknown to the evaluator or to the challenger in the beginning. And the operator, they're gonna provide some sort of input. Like they're gonna provide an assertion to A and B. So if they want to set A to 0, they're going to reveal A0. And if they want to set, let's say, B to 1, they're going to reveal B1. And during setup, they also provide ciphertexts. So for each of these rows, they provide a ciphertext. And this ciphertext allows the evaluator to decrypt the corresponding output to the inputs. So let's say, for example, I guess I have to use this. So let's say, for example, the operator gave you A0 and B1. Then you use those as the key to decrypt C0. So depending on which inputs the operator gave you, you will be able to decrypt the corresponding output. You will not be able to decrypt C1 if you don't have A1 and B1. Does that make sense? So each row gives you exactly one output. And so during setup, we just have to exchange these ciphertexts. And also, I have to verify, or like I have to prove to you that these ciphertexts are actually correct. So if you know the correct inputs, you're going to learn the correct outputs. And these gates, they are obviously composable because the output is a label, the input was a label. So you can just take the output of one gate and feed it as an input to the next gate. And this way, you can compose large circuits and express essentially any kind of function. Does that make sense? He's nodding. Okay, so this is roughly how garbled circuits work. And yeah, now we can compose these gates into large circuits. And once we provide an input to the circuit, we're gonna learn some specific output. And since we can do that with any kind of circuit, we can do it in specific with a snark verifier circuit. And then we have essentially universal computation because we can prove any kind of computation in the snark. And yeah, such a snark verifier essentially looks like you have a verify function which we express in the circuit, and the input is going to be a proof, and then the output is going to be true or false. The snark is either valid or it's invalid. And as I said before, if the snark is invalid, I'll go through the protocol step by step. So the bridge operator, he published a snark proof, which is going to be the input to the circuit. Then challengers can read that snark proof from the chain, feed it into the garbled circuit. And then if the snark is invalid, they're going to learn the output label for false. And this is the fraud proof. And otherwise, the operator just can take the money after some while. And now I've just said this is a black box. But in fact, these black boxes have quite some complexity. We went through quite an evolution in the last year. First, we used Yao-style garbled circuits. They are from like 1986, so it's ancient technology more or less. And the good thing about them, they are very simple. They are basically the thing that I just explained. It's just hash functions and symmetric crypto. So symmetric encryption. So it's very solid and nothing fancy about it. And we actually have an implementation of it. But the bad thing is that it requires on the order of a few hundred gigabytes of circuit size. So that's quite inefficient. And you need that for every operator and essentially for every deposit. And the setup time for a single one is more than 30 minutes. So that's extremely inefficient. And that's why people started doing lots of research. First, Liam Egan, the guy who was sitting here in the previous session, he came up with a scheme called Glock. And the good thing about it is it reduced the circuit size down to 100 megabytes, or a few hundred megabytes. But the bad thing was it made challenging permissioned. That means it's not that anyone can challenge invalid proofs, but only a specific set of people can provide counterproofs or fraud proofs. And that is, of course, bad because you don't want to trust these people. You don't want to introduce a new trusted party. So we were quite, it was not quite satisfying. So Liam kept on doing more research, and then he came up with the Argo scheme together with Ying Tong. And they reduced the garbled circuit size down to 32 megabytes, and now it's permissionless again. And this is essentially the state of the art. This is how we can build very efficient bridges right now. The only drawback is that the on-chain footprint is slightly larger, but since the on-chain footprint is already so small, it doesn't matter that it's a bit larger. And then there is another scheme called BAPE, which is based on the ArgoMac. They are combining the ArgoMac with linear witness encryption. And the good thing about it, it's it has quite small circuit size, and also the construction is arguably pretty simple. That's the nice thing about it. However, the problem is it's also permissioned, so it's not very cool for our use case. Like it is good for like two-party protocols, but it's not very well suited for bridges. And there are a few historical fun facts. I had already worked on garbled circuits back in 2022, before the creation of BITVM3, but I didn't make the connection that we can actually use garbled circuits. And even Liam Egan also has mentioned garbled circuits before the creation of BITVM. And then it took like until 2025, where then Jeremy Rubin, garbled circuit, pilled me and told me, hey man, this is actually a replacement for BITVM2. And he said like, I don't know, 2-3 sentences to me, and it was immediately clear that BITVM2 is completely obsolete. And the fun thing is we just had completed the implementation and had signed an expensive contract for an audit. And then he said 2-3 sentences to me, and it became all obsolete. But yeah, that's research. And another fun thing is BITVM3 was already possible back in 2017. And in contrast, BITVM1 and 2 was not. And it's kind of funny that we had to take that detour to like first build this monster BITVM1 and then this even crazier monster BITVM2 to then figure out the simple solution, which was already possible since 8 years. And that makes you kind of wonder what other hidden gems are lurking there and hiding in plain sight that we just have not discovered yet. Now, to give you an overview of how this works in practice, first the guarantees. It's still kind of like a federation, but it's way better because a single honest member suffices. You can have 1,000 co-signers and 1,000 bridge operators, and the guarantees are that if any of these co-signers is honest, then nobody can steal money from the bridge, and if any of the operators is live, then every withdrawal will eventually succeed. And of course, if you have a high stake in the side system, you can become a member yourself, and then it's fully trustless from your perspective because you can trust yourself. So then the security guarantees become quite strong. And how do these graphs look like? In Ethereum, you have this nice programming language, Solidity, that everyone loves. In Bitcoin, we don't have that at all, unfortunately. What we have is just plain old simple transactions, and we have to express everything in transactions, and we essentially express contracts in graphs of transactions. And this is going to be, or like now I'm going to show you the bridge graph for simple Bitcoin bridges. So we have Alice, and she wants to deposit 10 BTC. Then she asks this, she sends the money to this signing committee, like it's an N of N multisig. So all of them have to sign. And they're gonna pre-sign a withdraw transaction for the operator. And they do this essentially for every operator. And this signature just, it commits to its own output, but it also commits to this green output here. And that means the withdraw transaction is spendable only in conjunction with that green output. So where does that green output come from? The green output comes from this kickoff transaction. In that kickoff transaction, the operator has to assert to a snark proof. They provide a snark proof, and they can only ever spend the withdrawal transaction if they previously executed that kickoff transaction. And then they get this connector, and this is going to be time locked such that it takes a week for them to execute the withdrawal transaction. So essentially at this point it means they put the kickoff transaction on chain, then they have to wait a week, and then they can execute the withdrawal transaction. So where does the optimistic computation come into play? Well, they have asserted to that snark proof, and during setup we have set up some garbled circuit. So anyone can read that snark proof from the kickoff transaction and then execute or verify the snark proof in the garbled circuit. And if it's incorrect, then they learn this false label, which is going to be a fraud proof, which allows them to execute the disproof transaction, spending that connector and essentially rendering this withdrawal transaction obsolete. Okay, he says it's time to wrap it up. So this is roughly how the bridge contract works. rough idea, the withdrawal transaction is spendable only in conjunction with that connector, and if you're lying, you will lose that connector, rendering your withdrawal transaction obsolete, and you cannot spend the withdrawal transaction anymore. Outlook and summary. Outlook, they still have some drawbacks. First of all, this covenant emulation, like this N of N thing that I showed you here, this is pretty annoying, and it would be great to have covenants. There are a few covenant opcodes that people are talking about, and it would be great if any of them would get activated. But in the long term, it would be way better to actually have a native snark verifier on Bitcoin. And that would be possible if we had something like big int arithmetic, great script restoration, or simplicity. Quick summary, BITVM enables better Bitcoin bridges. This is good for Bitcoin scalability, privacy, and also programmability. BITVM3 is based on Garbled circuits. It enables off-chain computation. It's a 1000x improvement in on-chain cost over BITVM2. Now the Argo scheme gives another 1000x improvement in off-chain cost. And snark verification is now fully practical on Bitcoin. And the Argo bridge launches soon in 2 weeks, TM. Yeah, and ideally we would have soft forks for making this like nice. That's it. I'm gonna skip over this, and we're done. Thanks.